Welcome, everyone. There we go. And I'd like to welcome you all. And by the way, thank you all, because the vast majority of the people on these screens are volunteers. And thank you for that. And for those who are in the audience, thank you for attending as well. I'd like to kick off this meeting of November 10th of 2021 of the District Advisory Committee of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. So our first item is to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded on Zoom, and we go to the first action item, which is to look at the meeting summary. And the question is, are there any corrections to the current meeting summary that everyone had a chance to look over? Okay, hearing none, the meeting stand approved. So the next item is discussions. And I want to let the people in the audience know that community members wishing to speak on specific topics, items during our public comment, please let us know in the Zoom chat which areas you wish to speak about. So before we get to our first piece, I really want to take just a second to remind us that it's exciting. We have a representation through 5 sub areas throughout our Parks District, Parks and Rec District, and all of us are representing 105,000 people. And of that representation, our focus is on the entire district and addressing the challenges, the desires, and the needs of all those district residents. So when we listen to the things we listen to, that's the ears I invite us to be listening from, so that we will then ultimately be able to advise the NCPRD governing board, who is also the BCC, if we have recommendations. So with that in mind, I'd like to bring up our first item, which is Milwaukee Bay Park funding agreement, and welcome Gary Schmidt, our county and NCPRD administrator.
Thank you very much, Chair Grover. I'm grateful to be with you all tonight. And yes, Grover just introduced me. I'm the county administrator for Clackamas County and the district administrator for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Thank you all for your service. And I just briefly wanted to give you an update on the Milwaukee Bay Park intergovernmental agreements and funding. As you may know, earlier this year, the NCPRD Budget Committee, followed by the District Board of Directors, approved a budget note during the approval of the budget for NCPRD. And in that note said that before construction began on Milwaukee Bay Park, that there would be a finalized construction intergovernmental agreement between the district and the city of Milwaukee, and that system development charges would be reviewed by the District Advisory Committee. So phase 1 of that budget note is almost complete. That is the construction IGA between the district and the city of Milwaukee, was drafted by staffs of the district and the city. The city of Milwaukee approved that construction IGA at their city council meeting on November 2nd. That will now next go to the District Board of Directors at their Wednesday, November 24th business meeting. It's on a Wednesday because Thanksgiving is on the Thursday when the District Board, the county commissioners would normally meet. So Wednesday, November 24th, the District Board of Directors will hopefully approve the construction IGA for Milwaukee Bay Park. And hopefully the District Board will approve the design contract for 2 Inc., which is the company that was hired to do design work on Milwaukee Bay Park. This is an amendment to that existing contract. So that also will go before the Board of Directors on November 24th. The funding agreement, the city of Milwaukee also approved a funding intergovernmental agreement for Milwaukee Bay Park on November 2nd. This was all included in your packet, by the way. This council, I mean, you have a little bit of time tonight if you want to offer any comments, but really next month's meeting, if I'm looking at your agenda correctly, you'll have a chance to talk about system development charges in particular as they're tied to this project and the efforts of eventually moving forward with the financial IGA between the district and the city of Milwaukee. So that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I just respectfully ask that you do your review of the financial agreement as efficiently and as expeditiously as possible at your December meeting and in January meeting if necessary to kind of wrap that up so we can move forward and for you to make a recommendation to the district board of directors to move forward on that financial component. So that is simply the update. I wanted to offer that. It was important enough that I chose to be here personally to give you this update. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, as well as Jeff Munns is our county attorney, district attorney, and Mike Bork, of course, is the director. So that's my update, Chair. Thank you.
I had a quick question, Gary. I didn't understand what the date of, I thought you said November 24th of 2021. What happens then?
I'm sorry, the district board of directors will next meet on Wednesday, November 24th, the Board of County Commissioners, to approve, if they approve, the Milwaukee Bay Park construction IGA and the amendment to the contract with 2 Inc., which was the design firm hired to do the design work on Milwaukee Bay Park. So
Okay,
both
but
of those will occur November.
That's
24th.
not the funding agreement then. That's the, okay, just, and
Not
that
the
one's going to
funding
be,
agreement.
and that one will be when?
As soon as this committee has a chance to review the system development charges and the funding agreement. So I
Okay,
just
good.
ask you do that as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you. Just want to clarify the timeline there.
Thank you.
So comments and questions.
I had a quick question.
Okay, Ben?
Gary, did the city council for Milwaukee approve both the IGA and funding agreement?
They did, yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Anyone else? This is where we get to ask questions. Well, I think I waited long enough. Hearing none. Thank you, Gary, for that update. And we're not going to be discussing any of the specifics now, nor making any specific recommendations now, if I understand correctly.
I'll look to Mike. I don't think that's on tonight's agenda, but it looks like perhaps your next agenda, you'll have that opportunity.
Very good. I just want everyone else to hear that. That's as I understood it, and I wanted them all to understand as well. So we'll have another chance to, if there are questions come up between now and then, to ask, speak, or make recommendations other than looks great to me.
Absolutely. And if you do have questions in between, of course, I am happy to answer them offline, or Mike or any NCPRD staff member, just whatever process you use, whether through the Chair Grover or to Mike directly, just send your questions or comments. We're happy to answer those before your next meeting.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Any more questions for or comments to Gary? Why are you still here? Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much. I need to leave in about 5 minutes, so I'll gracefully just exit at that time. Thank you.
Okay, good. We'll all watch. Okay, so the next item is the SDC methodology update. And that's going to be Director Bork.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Melina, can you pull up the 2 slides? So while Melina's pulling that up, I'll give you an update of what's happened as of today, which is we have entered a contract with FCS Group, which is the consulting firm that we had used back in 2018 when the methodology study last was being dealt with. We had our first kickoff meeting with them with staff today to just kind of go over preliminaries and some initial scope of where we're starting from, which FYI is really just where things were left off at the last point. And then we talked quite a bit about the process moving forward in how to engage with the DAC to bring you up to speed on where everything is. And so just Melina, is it not, are we having tech issues?
Yes, no, I mean, yes, but it's, bear with me. It's just a little slow right now. Can everyone see
That's
that?
okay.
Okay, I'm trying to do full screen, and every time I do, it's kind of like, no, thank you.
So one of the things that we wanted to ask the DAC this month is Originally, we had planned on them coming to a meeting, to the December 8th meeting next month and doing a basics of SDCs and really probably not have much time for more than a basics. The information in our meeting today that we got from FCS is they'd really like to have a good solid 45 minutes to an hour to go through not only the basics, but how that interrelates to what they're going to be doing for the rest of the update process. And so one of the thoughts was to have a meeting prior to the December 8th meeting that is specifically a special meeting to go through the FCS documents and catch you up to speed, and then follow that with the December 8th meeting, where we'll actually be discussing capital improvement project list, which is tied to the SDCs, and you all will have a bit more context of why that's so important to the SDC process. But it's asking you to have yet another meeting on top of the meeting that we have next week to talk about Concord. And so we're trying to be, respectful of what everybody's time and desires are. But in general, that's where we're at as of right now. Is we're gathering the information. We're starting to gather the data that we need to send to or to give to FCS, demographics, property information, property value data, things like that. We're starting to gather that. That was part of our kickoff meeting today. But and Melina, can we scroll up? I think there were two slides that were part of the agenda packet. There we go, that set there. Okay. So if you go down to the next slide, that's where we have the schedule.
This is, I don't believe I have that one, Mike.
Okay. Did you all see that in your packet? Do you know which slide I'm talking about? It's a basic timeline broken up into the next several months. Really, a lot of how fast we are able to move with FCS depends on how quickly we can bring the DAC up to speed on what decisions are going to be asked of them through the process. But there's essentially a three-step process. We're engaging in the first step right now. The second step is the analysis part. That's where they're crunching the numbers and gathering the data. And then the third part is the communications part. And keep in mind that once we have gotten to a recommendation that's brought back before you all to consider for a recommendation up to the full board, there's then a 90-day comment period that has to remain open, followed then by you all having a vote or a recommendation to recommend up to the board. So Melina, you can stop sharing. These aren't the right slides. That's for next. So that, I mean, that's the general update. Is best case, or our general estimated scenario is that by August of next year we would be having the votes to or recommendations to bring forth for an actual methodology.
Can I make a quick question in the middle of this? Am I to understand that, and I understand this is all about SDCs, could you relate how the zones and or the continuing of the zones, because I don't think everyone has heard how the two are directly related, so we can't eliminate the zones until, is that what I'm hearing? And would you make that clearer for everyone?
Yes, and I think we've covered this in other meetings, but right now we are under the 2007 or the current SDC methodology is the zoned methodology that has the 3 zones. Back in 2018, there was a resolution of support for an SDC methodology with the first part saying we support removing zones and going to a levelized methodology. And then COVID happened and everything else, and that was where it was left. And that's why we're having to play catch up now, because there was it was communicated to the board at the time that there was still a lot of work that needed to be done beyond just everybody agreeing to the elimination of zones, because that's just part of it. We don't have the mechanism of how to then distribute the money, collect the money, who's eligible under what conditions, and all of that's based on data numbers that have to be done. It's all part of, quite honestly, the FCS presentation next month. They're going to do a much better job of explaining the laws associated with SDCs and what role they play and what the information is that they're doing. Why we have to engage with a company like this for this kind of work, and that's our hope, is for them to be able to do an SDC update, or kind of SDC 101 more in depth than what I gave you guys 2 months ago. Tie that to how where we're picking up from. So that's where we're not starting from scratch, Chair. We're picking up from the assumptions that were made in 2018, which were eliminations of the zones and a levelized methodology.
Right. So I just know that in other conversations I've had with other people, I didn't know that everyone knows that the zones cannot be moved until a further conversation about the SDCs. That's the part that I don't think everyone who I'm looking at on these screens right now is aware of that. And I know there's been previous conversations, but it still hasn't been clear. I understand that we need to look at standardizing the SDCs and where do they go and so on and so forth. But I don't yet know that everyone sees how that's tied to the zones. That's the only part I'm not clear about.
Well, they're directly tied. I mean, the zones are determined of who's eligible for what collections and distributions and how things are collected. You can't just eliminate the zones without the methodology of how everything is eligible. That's the methodology that we need to go to.
Okay. Well, if no one else has any comment or questions about that, then I'll stop there. Thanks. Okay.
Looks like Joel's got his hand up.
I appreciate that. Go ahead, Joel.
Hey, so Michael, and by the way, thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day a little early.
Thank you.
So does staff have any potential dates for doing this preliminary kind of groundwork meeting to suggest to us right now? Or is this something that we're going to discuss, we should discuss first? Or just thinking in terms of kind of moving forward here,
yeah,
and getting calendars out, things like that.
We have 4 dates that FCS is available prior to December 8th, December 1st, December 2nd, or sorry, 3 dates, December 1st, December 2nd, or December 6th. Or we also discussed an option of doing a meeting earlier than the DAC meeting on December 8th, a meeting before the meeting, if that was something. But we'd really love for everybody to have time to digest what FCS says about the SDCs and their slide presentation before we then jump into the December 8th meeting, where we're going to be talking about the CIP list and our need to update it. So again, it's really up to you as the body if you want to still try and do the presentation on December 8th, or if any of those other dates are appealing to you. December 1st was our initial thought, just again, keeping them on Wednesdays at 5:30. This would only be about an hour-long meeting, we hope.
Well, based on it's clear that we're going to need to have more meetings than the ones we currently have on our schedule. So it's up for people to speak to that. And I know for me personally, the 1st and the 2nd don't work for me. So it'd have to be the 6th or the 8th. And yes, Jan.
I think it's important that we do the pre-meeting, because we'll waste a lot of time if we don't, or extend time that would be used in a better way. And I'm available all 3. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Joel, is your hand still up, or is that?
No, I just returned it. Just curious if maybe staff has time to even put together like a doodle poll or something for us, so we can, that way we don't just discuss calendars right now.
Perfect.
That's what I was
and then
gonna
we
suggest.
can,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we can send out, Jessica, if you could make a note, we'll send out a doodle poll of some sort to everybody and propose a few dates and times. We may explore a couple of others if FCS has availability. We'll double check with them, but we'll get
Okay.
that out early next week.
Thank you. Any more questions about the SDC methodology update? And that does tie to that the CIP will be in our December meeting.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All righty. Next item. Public meeting law presentation. And that's
Okay.
again, Mike.
All right, and Melina, if you could pull up the PowerPoint slide on this. This was something that we had talked about a couple of months ago, and I asked for a couple of months to develop it and kind of vet it through staff and vet it through our county council. And so really some of this is going to be a recap of very similar information that you received from Stephen Madcore back in the formation days when you guys were forming as the DAC. And I wanted to use that as the foundation of the presentation, but ultimately wanted to delve a little bit more into the practical sides of open meeting law and hopefully provide some best practice solutions of how we can still communicate and do what needs to get done to represent the community while still having an eye towards that open meeting law. If we're having difficulties, can somebody else see if they could pull it up?
I was gonna
Andy,
say, you can't see my screen?
We can see tabs of a Zoom screen.
Yeah, so your web browser screen.
Let me try this again. Thought I had it. I am seeing the screen. Is that better?
Ah, there we go. Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't ready to take over so quickly there.
All right. So the Oregon Public Meeting Law requires that decisions of public bodies be arrived at openly. And with very few exceptions, members of the public have the right to attend all meetings of the public bodies in which decisions about public's business are made or discussed. That's, again, Review 101. The overarching principles of Oregon's Public Meetings Act are in its very basic purpose statement, and this is just for review. Again, you all have seen this before. The Oregon form of government requires an informed public aware of the deliberations and decisions of governing bodies and the information upon which such decisions are made. It's the intent of the public meeting law that decisions of governing bodies be arrived at openly. And again, really just saying that the decisions that you make and the ways you reach those decisions should be open to the public. Next slide. Who is subject to the law? A governing body means the members of any public body that consists of 2 or more members with the authority to make decisions for or recommendations to a public body on policy or administration. So obviously you all are there to make recommendations to a public body, but you are still a governing body under the public meeting law. Next slide. Even if a meeting is for the sole purpose of gathering information to serve as the basis for a subsequent decision or recommendation by the governing body, the meeting laws still apply. And this requirement serves that legislative policy that an informed public must be aware of not only the decisions of government, but also that information upon which those decisions were made. So it's not just the decisions, but how those decisions were reached. And that's you'll see where that is important when we talk about deliberation. Next slide. Things that we already do as basic public meeting practices is public noticing of the meeting and its contents ahead of time, allowing for public input at meetings, keeping the business discussions at the meeting only, publishing the minutes and allowing for public access of those minutes, being transparent in all our discussions and decisions, and having a quorum be needed to make decisions, basic majority rule on that. And these are things that almost I think every governing body in the county already does these already. Next slide. So the authority to make recommendations to a public body, this was a slide from the Department of Oregon, Department of Justice on Open Meetings Act, and I thought this was interesting to keep in mind. As long as the advisory body is itself a governing body of a public body, the fact that your members are private citizens is irrelevant. The scope of the public meeting law extends to private citizens, employees, and others without any decision-making authority when they serve on a group that's authorized to furnish advice to a public body. And the example that the Department of Justice uses is a school board advisory committee consisting of private citizens who meet with and make recommendations to the board on school matters is still a governing body, even though they are made up of private citizens. They act as a governing body. Next slide. All right, the next few slides talk about serial deliberations, the walking quorum, wheel hub deliberations, collective concurrence, or daisy chaining. Basically, all of those are pretty much the same thing. I'm gonna, and they're all prohibited under open meeting law. We're gonna focus on serial deliberations and wheel hub deliberations because the others are just variations of those. So in addition to avoiding a quorum of members and publicly noticing a gathering of 3 members or more, you need to do your best to avoid serial and wheel hub deliberations. And the first one of these serial deliberations is very simply when member A talks to member B about something that's coming before on business. And then member B then talks to member C and talks about what they talked about with member A, and you see that chain going on. This is considered under public meeting law a form of deliberation, as the individuals of the body are collectively conducting business outside of noticed public meetings. They're just not doing it in the same room. It's a serial deliberation. The next one is very similar. Wheel hub deliberation, same basic concept, but it's where member A talks to member B, then member A talks to member C, then member A talks to member D. You can see, like the hub of a wheel, deliberations happen around that central member radiating out. It's also considered a form of deliberation because, again, the body is collectively conducting public business outside of a noticed meeting. Next slide. So the next few slides are going to be proposing questions about what can be done and then offering a best practice solution. So first slide on this, and these are coming from the state of Massachusetts website on open meetings, but their open meeting laws are the same as ours. So the first question is, may a public body member communicate with other public body members over email? And the answer is yes, but in limited circumstances. And the differentiation is here. A member of a public body may email other public body members on matters within jurisdiction of a public body, so long as it doesn't reach a quorum of that public body and doesn't engage in serial deliberations. Communications between and among a quorum of the public body on the matters must occur during a noticed meeting. So you can't send out a message to more than the majority of the DAC about matters within the jurisdiction of the public body. Now, if it doesn't reach the quorum, that's okay. That's allowed under open meeting law. Your best practice, and all of these best practices are just things to think about or guidelines. This one is limit your communications to less than a quorum and don't discuss business of the body except at your meetings. Next slide. May members of a public body communicate with the public through social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, web pages, etc. Yes, you can communicate with members of the public through any of the social media platforms, but remember not to engage in deliberation with any of the other members through any of those communications. And if you're communicating directly with a quorum over the social media platform, that may violate the open meeting law. So just be aware of who else is on a discussion that you may be having if you're engaging in something through social media. The best practice is being more minimalist, post pictures from events you attend, ask people to come to a meeting, but be careful not to engage in business discussions. Next slide. May members of a public body participate in the listserv? And this was a wishy-washy answer from the Massachusetts website. It depends, but it depends on what activity is taking place. A listserv is an electronic mailing list, and members of a public body may subscribe to a listserv. But where a quorum of the members belong to that listserv, public body members can't participate in discussions which involve subject matter within the jurisdiction of the public body without engaging in unlawful deliberation. So it's recommended the public body members use caution when both joining or participating in listservs in which subject matters within the jurisdiction may be discussed. Best practice recommendation is if a listserv may have more than a quorum of the members of the DAC on it, don't participate in discussions. Be an observer, but don't participate. Next slide. Can members of a public body give reports to other public bodies? Yes, as long as it stays informational. If 3 or more members are gathering, it falls into the public meeting requirements and should be noticed, although it doesn't have to be necessarily just noticed by us. If it's part of another meeting of the county that's being public noticed and our report is included in that, that's okay. We just would like to know when those are happening. If 1 or 2 members are providing a report, no notice is required. Just like with a listserv, don't participate in discussions which involve subject matter within the jurisdiction without risking engaging in unlawful deliberation. So the best practice for public bodies is keep your interactions informational and neutral, especially when taking public comment, as often the DAC has said that their intent is to be out collecting public comment. But try and keep your interactions informational and neutral. Next slide. So that is the end of our open meeting law presentation. I wanted it to be a guideline of things for you to think about and questions just when you're interacting electronically or in person, just things to think about. If you'd like to see the sources of where my information came from, you have that as well in your packet. Are there any questions? And we do have Jeff Munns here from Clackamas County Legal, our county counsel, to answer any questions that I can't.
Okay, we're Anita, your hand is up.
As an example, what if I wanted to get together with another DAC member and look at the Justice property and then go hang out at a coffee house afterwards and get to know each other better? Is that risky?
Just the 2 of you, no problem, because it's only
Okay.
2 people. But yeah, again, between 2 people, you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about. There's no open meeting law police that are out there, trying to listen in on coffee conversations. It's really the intent of what the discussion is. And if the 2 of you are talking about ways that you want to try and form alliances to get your votes to swing, a certain way, well, that's one thing. But if it's just getting to know each other or talking about general issues or what they're interested in and what you're interested in, that's absolutely appropriate and encouraged.
Okay. Also, if we have this sort of legal liability, do we have coverage from the county to protect us so we don't get sued, or in case we get sued?
Jeff.
Yeah, as a body, an advisory body for the county, there is liability coverage, but I think that in this circumstance, it would be more, how we would respond with the information and so on. So when you do these certain things that in violation of these laws, it also opens up other communications to now being also disclosed as public records. So use of private email through or on listservs, a lot of the information then would become a public record and would need to be disclosed and obtained. So that's why it's important to be careful about keeping your communications within these public meetings so that it doesn't have that become a problem for you, having to gather your personal email and so on. But yeah, like your example of talking to one other person.
Are you saying I'm covered?
Short answer, yeah, you're covered.
Okay.
That's
what I was looking
you
for.
work for this body, yes.
Okay. Because whether I did something wrong or not, somebody could still accuse me of it.
There is that, yeah. It's, you know, it's one of those things that we can't insure against, no lawsuits, but we can ensure that you're covered in those circumstances. You know, people can sue for almost anything, but whether they're successful or not, when you're covered is the important part.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? How about the people we don't hear from very often? Jan or Maureen or Dave, any questions about that? Okay, good. I got a shake of a head from Jan and silence from everyone else. I actually have some questions. I listened to the Board of County Commissioners having their conversation about code of conduct, which then drifted in and out of public meeting law issues and the like. And it was a pretty strong case being made that we don't give up our rights as public citizens, private citizens, et cetera, to have conversations. And if I understand correctly, the Board of County Commissioners have approved the process of growing the 4 sub areas that do not currently resemble the structural model that the successful city of Milwaukee has as far as having a parks board, et cetera. And to get from there to here, there will be a requirement to do outreach and information gathering and including people's input, all of which is data gathering. It is not deliberating to make a decision, but our mandate specifically from the bylaws say that we are to provide recommendations based on addressing the challenges, desires, and needs of all district residents. So you put those 2 parts together, the 2-way communication with district residents and our requirement to represent that communication, those interests, so that the Board of County Commissioners aren't out in every meeting hearing everything, that our recommendations are supposed to represent that. I have a concern about where does it become deliberation if what we're actually doing is gathering information, finding what people care about, finding out what they're upset about, what they'd rather have, et cetera. None of those are this body deliberating. Those are speaking with the constituents who actually are the whole reason we have NCPRD. So I don't know who wants to answer that, but it's a big question for me.
Jeff, I can take a crack at it, and if I misspeak, please feel free to correct me. But really, it's the intent of the language that you use at those public gatherings.
Mhm.
Like I said, if you keep it neutral, where you're there as a sponge to collect information, but you're not giving your opinion or trying to give an outlook of how you want to see a decision go, or even at the extreme end saying, I'm going to make sure that we do X, Y, or Z. If it's an information gathering, here's the issue before the body. We need to make a recommendation to the board. I'm here to listen to people's comment, but not necessarily feeding into back and forth debate. It really, again, be in that listening sponge mode.
Good.
Jeff, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that, that's a very safe way to handle it, but you do have your First Amendment speech rights, and there's, Commissioner Savas could probably speak to this very well also. Everybody still has their ability to go to a meeting and say, this is how I feel about it. But you're speaking for yourself. And I think that's the important part, that when you
But
get
you are or not, sorry.
when you make it clear that you're speaking for yourself and not representing the body, I think that's the important piece, that if you're able to be clear about that avoids a situation where you are, participating in, misrepresenting the body or falling into this potential trap of serial deliberations, as influencing other members and piecing this all together, one kind of statement at a time. So making it clear what your opinion is, you can't, that's your right to do so. But I think you just want to be accurate in what you're representing.
Very good, right. So, and that's actually was the core of the conversation at the Code of Conduct, was is being clear that you're not there representing, I am on this committee, I am representing this committee. If you declare and make it very clear that this is my own personal input, then we're okay to do that. Is that, that's what I heard you just say.
Right. That's your right to do so. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Ryan.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, bear with me for a second. So in public engagement, one of the key pieces or key tenets to public engagement is not to lead. It's not to insert your beliefs. It's not to insert, it's to gather information. It's to create a space where the individuals can talk about what they want to talk about and to help them to cultivate that.
Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say, because I have to be very careful when I do public engagement, that I'm not leading them down the road that I want to go down, because as a public employee, I'm not a public employee right now, it's my responsibility to use my professional expertise and to listen to the community. So I would say that, to me, that is the approach we as a board and people as individuals representing the board should take, is let's cultivate people telling us what they want, not lead them to what we want. Is that fair to say, Jeff?
I think that's right. I think that, well, I mean, separate from our discussion here about the rules regarding quorum and or not, sorry, the public meetings law, you're certainly going to gather better information if you simply ask the question and listen to the answer, than try to force a result, because people are still going to think for themselves.
And it's safer.
Certainly. Better
Right.
information.
Right, but that is in the role of representing the district advisory committee or a sub-area representative to go out and elicit information, as opposed to having a conversation as a private citizen. You just have to be clear which group you're speaking from and what purposes that you're speaking from.
I think that's right. And you can do the same thing in the same conversation, but you have to be careful what hat you're wearing. And I think that it's, I have that happen when members of the public call me, and I have to be clear, I don't represent them, I represent the county. Because, people want to rely upon what you say. And Ryan made a very good point, representing, working for a public entity, you have to be careful with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas, go Paul.
Yeah, great conversation. I just want to add that, my experience as a commissioner, I think, is pretty unique, because we wear the hat of the county commission. We wear the hat at times for NCPRD, board of directors. We wear the hat for a number of our county service districts, and they're all separate jurisdictions. And sometimes, I will not say they're in conflict, but the interests are unique and different. So when I bump into someone at the store or at the county, I think people make the presumption that I'm maybe wearing a particular hat on a particular topic. And it's my responsibility, I feel, to say, in the capacity or wearing the hat of X, you might state or clarify something, but if you have a unique position and you can't represent the board per se, then I say, speaking personally, not on behalf of the board of directors of X, here's my opinion. That is something that you all can use. So, Joel can say, yeah, yes, I am a member of the district advisory committee for NCPRD. But my personal opinion on X is this. That is the safe way to separate it. What is totally wrong is to say, I'm Joel Bergman, and I'm a member of the DAC, and the DAC is going to do this, or the DAC believes that. So that's a very difficult position, even for the chair or the county commission chair or the mayor of a city. He or they or she needs to make sure that they are really actually representing the opinion of the body that they represent. Otherwise, again, taking that hat off and claiming it's your own self opinion or your own opinion independently is the way to be yourselves in the community and express your opinion.
Thank you, Paul. Actually, I want to, what do you call it, coattail on that, because I'm actually on other boards, some of them in the county, some of them more community, et cetera. And so I pretty clearly make sure that when I'm speaking for myself, that I am not representing any of those. Like when I testify for the Board of County Commissioners, I let it be known I'm on boards, but I'm there to speak for myself. And that seems to work so far. So I think it's a matter of clarification. Although what it did come out of this meeting is I need to remove all of you from any distributions I make from my community activity distribution, because if I have more than 1 or 2 of you on there, if I get up to 3 or 4 or 5, then I'm actually 6 is a quorum. So if I had 5 of you on there, then we've communicated to a quorum. So I don't want you to take it personal, but I'm going to remove all of you from my distributions. Thank you. Anita.
Yes, is there any issue? I sent out an opinion piece of sorts about the wetlands naming to all of you with our DAC email. Is there any issue with that? Is that totally appropriate, or should I have done it some other way?
Well, to clarify, was that broad information about as opposed to advocating for something?
I was advocating for something.
But I think that the intent of it wasn't to try and engage in serial deliberation. It was more, like you said, of an opinion piece. You know, in the future, it might be something to think about bringing up at you know, a special meeting or something like that. But I didn't see anything wrong with it, as long as we didn't have everybody start engaging in that. So you sending it out is great, but if 4, 5, 6 people started replying all, then you're engaging in illegal deliberation.
Okay, good to know.
So your hand's still up, and so is Commissioner Savas. Is that just by function of it hasn't gone down? Paul's gone away, so I will assume not. Anyone else have a comment or concern or question? The only thing I want to say is that it, in effect, if I hear it correctly, the communication between any of us is now limited to only in a public meeting. And my concern is some of us are on other committees together and other boards together, and some of them have overlap with this one. I'll take the Concord project as a specific, but I don't quite see how that can work, because we will talk about things that are in common with this body and with other bodies that we're on. So it becomes, I just want to be clear. When I read to what got said here, the part that was crystal clear, hardcore stuff, that is deliberation. So if one is deliberating, and deliberating is actually working to come to a conclusion. So now we're into what's the definition of when is one deliberating versus sharing information. And that's, for me, a pretty big gray area. And I'd like to hear you speak to that if you could, Jeff.
Sure. No, I think that it's different if you get an email, or maybe you get an email from a number of members of this body and say, hey, you went out and spoke with so-and-so. What did you learn? You're kind of giving a report. I think the important thing is that if you're doing that, that's fine. But I think what you would want to do is maybe attach it to your next minutes and make a report and say, I had this conversation. I also had a conversation with 6 or 7 other members of this board. I shared the information I learned from some meetings, or, you know, whatever it is that you gathered. And that way, the basis of your information that you're using to form your decision becomes part of the record of this body. You know, there's a lot of information that you potentially will gather, but I think that's where it becomes, if that happens, bring it into this arena, essentially. Make it part of your meeting, or wait and say, our next meeting is this date. I'll be happy to share it. I will put together a memo and we can discuss it there. You know, that's the safest way to do it, of course. But I think you're just sharing information, not discussing it. It's different. But if it's going to be something that you're widely, as a body, basing your decisions upon, make it part of the record here.
Okay. Were you at the code of conduct meeting with the BCC?
Was I? No.
Okay.
I think Ryan had questions as well. I saw before, but yeah.
Well, Anita, your hand, it puts the person to, your hand is up, and according to the machine, yours went up first.
Okay.
Anita?
Yeah, I'm just going
And then
back to the email we use between each other. that goes into the public record, doesn't it? And how does the public access that? I can't remember how that's going to work out.
Well, you have your NCPRD email, and that's something that the, sorry, Paul's posting something here too. Anyway, that's something that the district maintains, as far as it's not something that's searchable by the public. But it's something that we have access to, that we can bring in. Because private, it's not something that would necessarily be immediately available to the public.
Okay.
That's the best account to use, because that's the account the district can control easily.
Okay. Ryan.
So just I look at it this way, is that we're responsible for self-governing and being self-aware of how we're presenting ourselves and how we're showing up.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any doubt, just don't. That's how I look at it. I've seen a lot of emails, even before we got formed, there were some emails and requests. I just said, no, I'm sorry. We need to wait till certain times. So it's just safe not to engage. And to be really self-aware of what situations we're in, and just observe is really how I approach a lot of the work that I do, and other boards and things that I'm on as well. So that's a good one. Just like, if any doubt, don't.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that actually directly speaks to what did get discussed in the Board of County Commissioners meeting about code of conduct. And it was about how it dampens the participation of people if they have to be cautious and scared and warned, and as opposed to passionate and engaged, et cetera. So that's what the conversation was about. Not about misrepresenting, not about, well, I'm here and you're gonna, and nope. So I appreciate that. So people, y'all get to do what you choose to do within that. I think we've had a pretty good representation of what the interpretations are, and there's room for people to figure out what works best. Other comments? Okay. Seeing none. That completes the public meeting law section. And now we're going to talk about the park naming policy, Boardman Complex public naming submission, and proposed dates for gathering data. So who is leading this part of the conversation?
Well, I can start with kind of a recap of where we were last month, and you and I had spoken briefly earlier about dates and concerns about speeding, trying to cram the process into too short of a time. So the dates that we had listed on the agenda were really just meant to be essentially from the date of today, this meeting, to a couple of days before next meeting. But realistically, for us to do a good public engagement in several different avenues, in addition to the DAC members going out and soliciting information from their sub area folks, and hopefully getting them to engage, to do that realistically, to get the information to you all a week before next month's meeting, would have reduced the public information gathering time to about 2 weeks. And that's just really not going to do the public service. I mean, that doesn't do anybody any good. To just even getting our messaging out there, we need to be able to take some more deliberate time. So what I had recommended to the chair as something to think about for the body is to look at opening the public naming process today. That can be done here. But continuing the nominations through the end of December. And I'm trying to pull up, I only have one screen here. So pulling them to the end of December, say maybe Monday or Tuesday, December 27th or 28th, right after Christmas, which would give us opportunity then to compile all of the submissions into a single document to then be able to present to you all at the January meeting, for you then to take up for deliberation in whatever way you want to handle that from that list. So that was our recommendation. And then in addition to that, Melina, who had to leave the meeting, but I've got her information. She's our marketing and communications person. She had several ways that we would plan on getting the information out to the public. Online, we would create an online form off of our website that would have a basic nomination name and a chance for people to write the justification of the name. Create a flyer and have an online flyer and a print form that we can put out in our designated locations. Putting it, if we had the whole month of November and December to get that out, she feels pretty confident that we can get good coverage of that. Social media posts, e-blasts out to our NCPRD subscribers, create some signage at the parks, or at the park itself, A-frames for quick turn and banners if we've got more time, which if we go to the end of December, hopefully we would have time to create a banner. And then engaging with our other partners, and really that's encouraging you all to reach out and work with the groups that you're all in contact with, and ideally be able to direct them to the same nomination webpage that we have available to the public, just so that way we've got the same format and it's easy for you all to read. It's all coming in the same way. But with that said, there's nothing that says that any group or individual or member out in the public couldn't handwrite a nomination and send it in, or send an email to any of us within the staff. We'll certainly pass that on, or any nomination, as long as it's got a name and a justification as the requirements for following the policy say of why it should be named a particular way, it's considered a valid nomination. And so we would collect those as well. We would just transcribe them as well as we could into an electronic form if it wasn't already. So that's the process that we recommend. If we do have some extra time, which it does look like we may, we would also like to get some of those materials translated into the Spanish language. Potentially do a postcard mailer to homes around the surrounding or in that surrounding park area, and do, obviously we would do a press release as well. To just really try and cover our media bases. So those are the things that we would do internally, while we would be obviously asking you all to gather whatever information in any way you can as well from any interested groups. But that's what we were thinking. Wanted to put that out and see if everybody thought that was a good plan.
That sounds excellent, and I appreciate that. And having done work with that same body of folks getting all that stuff out that we went through to actually recruit and in turn choose many of the representatives who are here now, it made a big difference to go on the trolley trail and see it posted there, and or to go into a particular park and see it posted there. That was helpful. And then the follow-up, it was excellent. The staff really rallied for that. But the other thing that I appreciated that you just said is, so is the focus for people who are, because this is not a regional asset, I don't believe. I think this is more of a local asset. So where all, who, is there a targeting, and is it for anyone? And do you have to live in NCPRD to submit a recommendation? That's the part that seemed a little unclear. It hasn't been defined.
Well, I think, through the nomination, we will be asking information like what group they are representing, or if they're an individual. I don't know that there's any way that we can prevent anybody from submitting information, but I do know that our targeting efforts are to the district. That's our members. And so, we would have to probably, it would either have to be very obvious that it was a nomination from outside the district, or something, but our target audience of who we'd be trying to solicit it from are all of our district residents.
Okay. Very good. Thoughts, comments? Yes, Ben.
I have a question about criteria. You said, Mike, that you're going to have the people submitting a name write justification. How is it that, we as an entity judge versus just like because it seems very subjective. Is there criteria that says that it's going to meet? Yeah, how are we going to choose? I guess we'll let the chips fall when they come in. Maybe is that the way to
I
do
think,
it?
yeah, a lot of that'll depend on how many submissions we get. But really there's no criteria set forth in the policy unless we had the option, if you remember back when if we formed a subcommittee, the subcommittee would take all of them, narrow it down to their top 3 choices, and then present to you their top 3. Since we're handling it as the whole body, I think we're just going to put the list together and give it to you all to chew on and figure out, you know, because it's naming there, it's all going to be subjective. You know, we can't really assign, you know, number of words in the name. You know, is that weighted heavily over, you know, do any of the name words rhyme? I mean, you know, there's no way to really score a name. It's going to have to be, you know, really how many we get in and how you all feel, if there's one particular name or one particular group that writes a more compelling narrative of why they think that's the right name. And you're going to have to just how you feel. If somebody's got a better way that we could approach the actual picking of the name part, I'd certainly be open to suggestion. I mean,
sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead, Anna.
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, just 2 things. I was just thinking this is going to be like a test case for future naming, because we have to name Concord at some point and other parks, hopefully. But I'm also wondering, should we abstain from submitting something? Does that kind of go without saying that we don't submit ideas?
And why would you not? Are you not a resident of the NCPRD?
But I'm going to be discussing and judging and making a recommendation. I don't know. Just wondering.
I shamelessly voted for myself to be chair.
Well, I voted myself to be on the DAC, so okay, I'll take that as my answer.
Now, the other option that we could do, if you wanted to make it more of a balloted type of thing, is we could collect all the names, put them into an electronic survey type of form, and have all of you vote for your one and see if one comes out on top with 2 or 3 votes over, 1 or 2 votes of other options. I would suggest we wait to see how many nominations we get in, and then we can make a decision from there.
Right. And I want to reiterate why it's important to me that if our mission is to broaden the engagement of more people throughout the local area around where this particular park is, but period throughout the district, then we want to be inclusive and let people be able to feel heard. Whether theirs got picked or not picked is not the issue, but that they had a say in it, and that we'll see by compiling how many comes down to one or the other, and then we'll have to figure out a way to pick it out of that. But it really is an opportunity, because there are a lot of people, and I'm one of the reasons, by the way, that the time limit needed to pass is the next meeting of the Community Planning Organization of Jennings Lodge is going to take place in December. And so that is going to be something that'll be on the agenda for those people who are closest, most using of that area now. And so they don't get extra votes for that, but they get to discuss it as a group. And I'll be there, so I may get to express an opinion. And I don't know if that's violating the deliberation or not. That's where which hat do I wear? So I will speak as myself, not as a member of the District Advisory Committee, because I am on that community planning organization, have been for a long time. Other comments? Thank you all. Public comment. So is somebody been monitoring the chat to see who has expressed interest to speak?
Can I jump in real quick? So just to clarify, because I assume we didn't need a motion to set this submission date window. We are then going to, and I know you're going to post this, but it's going to be open through the end of December, essentially, is what we've decided.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, who's monitoring the chat? Mike?
Well, I'm looking over here. I see 8 attendees. I don't see any hands up. Jessica, have you heard? I haven't seen any comment. Oh, it looks like Karen Bjorklund says she has a question.
Right, and I know earlier I have to speak up. There was somebody who I have to say yes, ma'am, to on a regular basis, who said she wanted to speak as well when we get to. So that's it. So go, Karen, and then we'll hear from.
Okay, I believe I'm unmuted. I have just a quick question because I'm one of the people who has an email list to send out information to about the boardman naming. So I want to make sure I have this detail right. I wrote down a note at one point. You all said that the nominations would be through December 27th or 28th, and then I also heard you say through the end of the month. So I would feel more comfortable if you gave an actual date. If you picked one, and Mike could pick it, whoever wants to pick it is fine. But as long as I have an actual date that I can tell people.
Let's say the 27th then.
Okay.
By close of business, by 5 p.m.
Okay, 5 p.m. December 27th. Is that a Wednesday?
That's a Thursday.
Oh, is it?
Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong month. My bad.
It's a Monday,
27th
right?
is Monday.
Yeah.
It's a Monday. Monday at 5 p.m. Okay, got it. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Okay. All right, there she is.
There she is. Thank you. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I have to say I'm a little concerned earlier in Mike's presentation about SDCs and the whole process, hiring the consulting firm. I appreciate the desire to have current information. However, it would be about a year before we got everything, the current information. To me, the issue is not as much SDCs is the nation of zones. And there's only so many SDCs in the district. It's not that, I mean, there may be some specific laws about how close an SDC needs to have come in before you can build a park. But the district is the district. And the elimination of zones was pretty much agreed to 2 years ago. So because we have two major projects immediately with Milwaukee Bay and with Concord, both of which are dependent to some degree on the funding that comes from SDCs, to not really know those things. Now, I may just not be clear enough about this, and I would love to attend that special meeting. But it seems like that's a long time to be operating with an old system, and especially if it's going to affect some of the major funding issues coming up in front of this body. And I'm perfectly willing to be wrong, but I am concerned.
Chair, would you like me to speak to
Good.
that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. I actually was it's funny, you can't, this way it'd be better in a room. I was looking at Commissioner Savas because I do think he's had more involvement with STCs than anyone else that I see on the screen. But if you'd like to, Mike, and please do. And the thing that I heard her say was, I don't know that I am concerned about that we need to do this in a way that's going to immediately affect Milwaukee Bay Park. And I, by the way, we're all in a public meeting. I'm in favor. I'm looking forward to Milwaukee Bay Park. And I'm also looking forward to the whole full Concord project and all the parts that go with that, and the library and the Gladstone Library. I'm looking forward to all of those things. And I don't think that we're going to make any quick changes that going to make a significant difference in that. It is more the impact that zones have of eliminating us being one district, and we're actually 3 subzones with segregated funding. That's the issue that I wanted to hear addressed, not about whether it's short term. So Jan, did I just botch up what you said?
No, that's fine. That's a help. I wanted to know if waiting a year is going to in any way impact any of the things that are on the table. So, if it's not, it's not, but it is that emotional issue of one zone, one district rather than 3 districts determined by who's in what area.
Okay. So Mike, you want to try that?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little confused, but let me take a crack at this. The support to eliminate the zones are part of our methodology. Zones aren't separate from our methodology. We have a zone methodology. That's what it's called for SDCs. It's a zone methodology. The support from both the city of Milwaukee, the SDC steering committee, and pretty much everybody was an agreement that we eliminate the zones and go to a levelized methodology. Those are tied. That's directly where we left off. When the effort was stopped, everybody had agreed that getting rid of the zones and going to a levelized methodology was the direction to be moving forward. And FCS at the time prepared a very comprehensive report on what steps then still needed to be taken to complete the methodology. Those were never done. So to eliminate the zones, we can't eliminate the zones because the zones are our eligibility and how everything is collected is based on zones, and that's based on SDC law. We can't just eliminate the zones and still have the same way that we collect and distribute the dollars. They're tied together. So we did the first part of everybody agreeing to get rid of the zones, and that's again the starting point that we're starting from with FCS is assumption of elimination of zones, and then this levelized methodology in which there were 3 different options presented in 2018. That's the effort that's going to be re-engaged next month with you all, is to make sure that's still the direction that everybody thinks that we should go, but we need to get you up to speed on what has happened, and FCS wants to. That's what they want to do in that separate meeting. But we can't just eliminate the zones and say we have a one zone district or one district area, because that doesn't give us any of the guidelines of how we use and spend the money. And plus, to do so requires, again, things like this 90-day notice period that the public can comment on things, and it has to be approved by the board for the full methodology, which again, it's a zone methodology. So I hope that provided some clarity. I don't know, Jeff, you understand SDCs also. Is there a piece to that I'm missing that you understand?
Well, I think that, as this body is going to be making recommendations as to, capital projects going forward. And there's 2 pieces to SDCs. There's the methodology about collection, and then the methodology on how much SDCs can be used towards a project and how that is increasing the capacity of the district to provide services. So, whenever you go to build a project, is this something that's expanding, the opportunities? If you're upgrading a facility, is it just upgrading, the quality of the service, or is it upgrading the capacity for that asset to provide services? And so ones that increase the capacity are most eligible for SDCs, because you're increasing the capacity for the district to provide services. So, like you have a park and you add lights, now you've increased the hours that it can operate. So there's a certain percentage of that project that's eligible for SDCs. This methodology is going to be reevaluating this process, reevaluating what rate gets charged for SDCs. And then it's going to have some adjustment as to, what assets are in the park, what can be, what's going to be capacity increasing and so on. So, but that I think is going to have a much smaller effect from this process than what the rate is that could be charged. And so I think that, as I understood Jan's question, is within the next year, do we need to wait to do anything? And no, I mean, we have a methodology we can move forward with the projects that are already, in the works. And then going forward, that would be potentially adjusted. I see Heather just turn on her camera too. She also works on this a great deal and has been a great resource for these projects. So I hope that helped, but there may be more here that folks that can help answer that question.
Commissioner Savas, were you going to?
I'm going to take a stab at this from just generalize some experience I've had dating back to the year 2001 when I was on the water board. What's likely to happen is that, if the timetable that Mike laid out is put into place and you approve an SDC methodology in August, let's say, all parties agree, it's done, it's approved by the board of directors. And a year later, you come back with a new master plan. That new master plan will probably impact the SDC methodology, and it will probably have to be either updated or changed depending on what everyone wants to do. So it's not uncommon for an SDC methodologies to also experience either annual or every 2 or 3 years or whatnot updates as to either market conditions or completion of projects and so forth, to make sure that the methodology and the collection rate is commensurate with the current economic times or whatever it may be. So it's not ever really cast in stone in permanence. And I don't get a lot of comfort knowing it's going to be August of next year, which seems like a long time from now. But I would also think that perhaps maybe an interim, if you looked at it as an interim methodology, and if that helped expedite things, knowing that you're going to do a master plan that's going to be done probably afterwards, if you do a really good master plan, to where you might want to come back and reconfigure that methodology perhaps, or at least update it. So lots said, but we have done that in the past. In my experience, and that was, we knew we had, and I got on the water board, our SDC methodology was way out of whack. We did an interim methodology to get us up to speed, and then we spent actually a couple of years assessing our capital needs, and we came back and then we improved it, modified it, that is, substantially about 2 or 3 years later.
Thank you. Yes, Mike.
And thanks, Commissioner Savas. That was a great way to summarize and to look at this as the interim. That's exactly what we were talking about with FCS today. If you all remember, I talked about the capital improvement process that we want to engage with as part of our systems plan that involves anybody in the community being able to nominate projects and it being a vetted and weighted and scored process. At the end of that, our CIP list is going to look vastly different than what our current CIP list looks like. And we had just this morning talked with FCS and said, and at that point, we're probably going to want to come back to the DAC and have it updated again. And it probably is going to be a couple of years out, but who knows, we may get, timing may allow it earlier than that. But looking at this as an interim of being able to do what was talked about 2 years ago and put that into place, that's the effort that we're trying to accomplish and hope to do in the next several months.
Okay, seeing no hands. Thank everyone who contributed to that conversation. Heather, were you wanting to say something? I noticed you did come on. Okay, got it. I got the head shake. Okay, good. We will move forward with that and thank everyone for their questions and their comments. So any other public comment? Going once, twice. Thank you all for public comment. Now, DAC member reports. By the way, I really want to appreciate, some people have been giving regular reports and I always like hearing it. It's like, this is a public arena, so we can talk about what we've heard or what we care about, et cetera, in this setting. So does anyone have a DAC member report? Oh, after that big intro, there we go, Luca. Yes, sir.
Just to keep the DSA family in the loop, we had we presented on the 1st of November to our CPO here. It's a mouthful. It's the Sunnyside United Neighbors and West Mount Scott CPO, which was great. They do meet once every 3 months. There was a whole bunch of us there, actually, myself and Jan as the subcommittee, Dave, who's actually on the CPO, and then Grover was there, and I believe Anita was also in off screen. So there was a bunch of us there. Just to give you an idea for those that weren't there, we introduced ourselves, talked about who we are, what the idea of the DAC is, and then basically said, okay, if you want to talk to us, this is how you're going to communicate to us. So we gave them the 2 email addresses. I want to thank Candy. She was great at producing some sort of speaking notes for us to go into this meeting feeling prepared. I'll admit I did reach out to Candy and Mike, concerned specifically about the public meeting law and making sure we were doing the right thing. This was sort of the first time that we were doing this. And specifically because right in the middle of this CPO is our beloved justice property. So it was sort of like, how do we keep people engaged, but also have them communicate with us without saying, oh, sorry, we can't talk to you tonight, in a way. So what we did was we used justice property as a prime example of exactly why they should be emailing the DAC directly, so that their voices and their comments go directly to the entire group and NCPRD staff. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we did that. It will be once every 3 months. They have requested that we come back quarterly with reports. So hopefully we can share some exciting developments going through 2022, but just to keep all in the loop, that was back Monday, November 1st.
Thank you, Luca. Anita.
Well, thank you, Luca, for that presentation that you made at the CPO and putting the justice property back in front of everybody's awareness. And I'd like to say that this morning I met with Mike Bork and me and a constituent from my area to talk over some things related to the Concord project, which is coming up for us right away. And one of the concerns that I'm hearing from people around me is that the Park Library Community Center plans don't have the park in any focus. It's being lost in the noise. And when funding issues were being discussed at yesterday's BCC policy session, all the talk was about the community center and the library, and the park was not mentioned at all. There's no focus on it. But the reason I got on the DAC was to advocate for more parks, and especially for parks that are beautifully designed and mood elevating and serve as places to spend time in nature. And I continue to hear from people around me that they don't want areas in the district that are park deficient to remain park deficient. Parks are very motivating to a lot of the people that I'm around. So, although I know there are a lot of funding issues about Concord, to some of us, the kind of park that gets developed in a regional complex should be a special standout park, a park that works synergistically with the library to provide great tree and nature views from the large library windows that will face the park. With that in mind, I went a few days ago to the Leading Library in Milwaukee to focus on the views through the windows. I also found out that the architects for the Concord project had bused some library committee members to a library in Vancouver to see how that library optimized nature vistas from its windows. And I also researched libraries on Google Images that also optimized nature vistas, and to see how those views contribute to a library's atmosphere. In my mind, another thing that takes a park to a whole new level is if it has a water feature, and a regional park without a water feature and also a splash pad seems pretty sad to me. So I know that this all has problems with funding, but I just wanted to have this idea in the mix as we go forward.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, Joel.
I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but we do want to remind everyone that the Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board is still recruiting a member for our board. I know that the county put out a public notice on that, I think today or maybe yesterday, but I would like to encourage everyone here on the DAC or who may be watching to spread the word on this. You just need to be a resident or someone who works within the district. And I know right now our board actually has a representative from, I believe, every sub area currently, but obviously anyone is welcome to apply for this board position. We'd love to have you. We meet the second Friday of every month, and I believe it's a 3-year term commitment. More information can be found on the county website, I'm sure.
Thank you. Deborah.
Hi, speaking to Annika's point, there's going to be a meeting the public can sit in on this on the 17th for the Concord project. And I'm on one of the task forces, the Gladstone Task Force, but also on the library board. So I'm following all of this stuff. But things have been in a state of flux. And so even those of us who I think are very intimately following what's going on with that project have sort of been put on hold. So I would suggest everybody tune into the meeting on the 17th. And also, I would hope that soon this board, this committee, will be able to really talk about that project, because I think we've been kind of left out of the loop, and we shouldn't be.
Somebody want to correct me? I show on my calendar that the meeting for the Concord project is on the 16th, and then our meeting, that's us, NCPRD, is meeting on the 17th. But I could be mistaken.
You're right, Grover.
Okay.
I have meetings every night that week. So
me too. Monday,
and I think the library meets on Friday too, don't they, or Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah.
The library board is meeting on Thursday.
Gladstone meets on Monday. Concord Tuesday. Us again on the 17th on Wednesday, and then the library board on Thursday.
Lots of public meeting. We get to talk a lot. Okay, Luke, is that your hand up again? Okay, it is up. So I would put you over in that part of the screen for me. There we go. All right, good. Others who want to make a comment? Okay, I'd actually like to make okay. Do you want to go first, Ben? Oh, good. We're getting lots of stuff. I'll wait. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna let you all know that the city of Milwaukee put out a request for qualifications for design firms to prepare construction drawings for 3 neighborhood parks that were master planned several years ago, and the funding that came through for these projects is federally funded. I think it's the American Recovery Act. Mayor's on the phone. You can nod your head yes or no if I got that right. But we were awarded. The city was awarded several $1 million, so it's pretty exciting to get these neighborhood parks built in park deficient areas in the district, and happen to be in Milwaukee. One of them is Balfour Park, which is in the Ardmore Johnson Creek neighborhood near Providence. Bowman Bray is in the Lake Road neighborhood. And then Scott Park, which is adjacent to the library, is going to get redesigned and developed. So it's really exciting news for us up here in Milwaukee, and hopefully for folks visiting these parts of the district, especially the library. I think of the 3, that's the one I'm most excited about, just because of how many people from around the area visit the library and what that potential of that park could be.
Some of us are jealous that you have a new library. Yes, Dave.
I got taxed.
Okay, I'm really confused about the meetings. I thought the Concord meeting was next Wednesday, the 17th. Now,
It
somebody's
is.
mentioned it was the 16th. Now, is there two meetings or are they different meetings? Or are they the same meeting?
Well, let's clarify the names of them. The group that is meeting on the 17th, to my understanding, is us.
Yes.
The meeting on the 16th is the Concord Planning Library, Concord Property Library Planning Task Force that's been meeting for the last 2.5 years.
Correct.
And it'll come as a big surprise to them that, according to the website, our dates have changed without us being part of the conversation. So that's what that's about for the task force. Is that clear, Dave?
Okay, so there are two meetings.
Well, actually, like Deborah said, there's actually 4, but you could go to any of them that you want to. The first one is the Gladstone Library Focused on Monday. Second is the Concord Task Force on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday is our DAC meeting about the Concord property. And on Thursday is the Combined Library Board for Oak Lodge and Gladstone on Thursday. So all of those are next week. They're all public meetings. You're welcome to attend all of them. Some of us will be panelists on many of them.
And they all deal with the Concord project, is what you're saying.
In one way or the other.
They're all basically the same presentation. But they'll have a different focus, and maybe not for the library board meeting, that may be different, but.
Correct. It isn't quite the same, but.
The Gladstone meeting is going to focus on Gladstone and talk about the NCPRD Oak Lodge Library. The task force is going to be looking at the same information the next day. The information that you guys are going to see on Wednesday is the same information. We're trying to make sure that our messaging is consistent and so that everybody's getting the same information to work from, because ultimately all of those groups are being asked to provide input on the options that are being laid out with the current situation.
Great. Did that clear it up for you, Dave? Thank you. So we have a request from Mayor Gamba to speak.
Good evening, everybody. Sitting in for Desi tonight. He had a conflict. Chair Bornfeld, you just said that you were jealous of our library, and I wanted to say something that will hopefully give you all hope. We were in that process for over 20 years to update the Letting Library, and tried a number of different ways, as I'm recalling the history, to get it built, and finally resorted to passing a bond measure within the city of Milwaukee, which only makes up for half of the people that use the library. So the citizens of Milwaukee, the people that live within the borders of the technical city of Milwaukee, are paying for a library that twice as many people get to enjoy. So that is all by way of saying that although we tried several other ways to get a new library funded over the years, in the end, we had to bootstrap it ourselves. And so that may present some new ideas for how to fund another library for you all. And it will also give you some sense of the timeline that we had, and maybe it won't feel so slow what you're going through right now.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. I've been on the library board for a long time, and we've been working for 13 years. And all these years we've been living in a substandard library and not able to spend our funds. So, and then we had to even fight to save our library because we were going to be eliminated by an old plan. So we love the fact that you guys succeeded at that. However, that we have been kept out of the funding part of the conversation. So that's part of the challenge we have had. That's for the last 2.5 years, no funding conversations were allowed in any of our Concord Task Force meetings. So I appreciate the initiative that y'all got to take and do that, and I applaud it. So thanks. Okay, who's next? And thank you. Were you done? Thank you. Anybody more DAC member reports? Okay, next we're going to have the division reports.
Sorry, my unmute button wouldn't unmute. Thank you, DSC members. I hope you enjoyed the first division report, monthly division report that was part of your packet. It was an effort for us to try and keep you all kind of informed on what we're doing throughout the month. Projects being worked on, different higher level things. Wasn't meant to be a delve into, you know, hour by hour overview, but more of just, you know, the things that we've accomplished, things that are being worked on, active projects. And I hope you found that useful. If you would like to see other information in there, please give me feedback, and we'll see what we can do to incorporate additional information, or if anybody has any questions on there. I wanted to draw your attention to a few things within the division report, because all of these things are happening before the next DAC meeting. So if you're interested in participating or registering, the clock is ticking. The Thanksgiving dinner is coming up. The winter celebrations are coming up. Hooper's registration is happening before the next meeting, as is winter registration for a lot of our other activities. And all of that is going on prior to our next meeting. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. Also wanted to make sure everybody was aware, all of our facilities will be closed tomorrow for Veterans Day, and will also be closed on Thanksgiving, which again is going to be before we meet again. So there are other kind of scattered limited programs that might go on, but nothing in our facilities that we're actively running on any of those days. And then in the report also, but in case you didn't see it, the Milwaukee Center naming ceremony is going to be on November 29th. You all will be getting invitations that have more information about that for the unveiling of the new name plate for the Milwaukee Community Center. So hopefully you'll get those invitations soon and can join us. Joel stole my thunder about talking about the MCCAB opening. I saw that as well. So please, if you know somebody that could fill that, that would be great. We covered the Concord meeting next week at 5:30, and I'll look forward to seeing you all there. And then the only other note that I had on here, kind of under more director's comments, is Anita had asked a question generally about properties for sale. I know she was asking in reference to a number in the Concord budget, where there's a $4.5 million line item for property sales, and I think I can't remember the exact name. I wanted to clarify 3 million of that number is for the still money that we've got from our Hoodview sale proceeds. The other $1.5 million is just for a single property. That's the only one that that's on our radar right now. I do need to speak with Commissioner Savas. He has mentioned there might be a couple of other opportunities I'm not aware of, but the one that we're mostly looking at right now is the Vogel property to sell, and we've got to get it appraised. There's a process that has to be gone through, and we've had difficulty getting that process going with lack of appraisers, but that's the only property that's on our radar right now actively being considered for sale. We don't know if we do sell that property that we'd get $1.5 million. Even if we did get $1.5 million, some of the money that was used for that property was Metro bond money, that if we sell it, we may have to pay part of that back or all of that back. So that would be less than, taking out of whatever we would make off of there. So, and we'll get into more detail of what numbers are squishier than others in the Concord budget at our discussion next week. So, but I wanted to at least bring that up. You asked me to get back to you today or soon. But the Vogel property is the only one right now on our active radar.
Where is that?
Candy, help me out.
It's like 172nd. It's on the very outskirts of Happy Valley, kind of borderline. The developed, it was all farmland, but it's being developed.
So it's in sub area 3?
It is currently sub area 3, and it was purchased adjacent to a school that was actually just recently built and opened, I believe.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
that was the end of my report, unless there were questions about the division reports or anything else.
No, thank you.
Oh, Joel's got his hand up.
Oh,
I just have a quick question about not so much the direct division reports, but the anything else part. I'm just curious if there is any process or plan or criteria for our meetings to be held in person. And I ask only because there's not a tremendous amount of consistency throughout the county on in-person meetings, Zoom meetings, and hybrid meetings. And I just didn't know if, I'm sure that's been floating around somewhere in someone's head, but I'd like to find out if there's any sort of update from at least staff on when we may be able to anticipate meeting in person again.
Short answer is I don't know right now. I mean, the numbers are still not looking great statewide for, COVID and all of that. We don't have, as far as I'm aware, we don't have a mandate that it has to be online. But that's what I'm most comfortable with in the current environment that we're in for asking of my staff. But that certainly, if people feel strongly that we need to move to in-person meetings, there's places that we can try and make that happen and maintain safety.
Thanks. Upon that, though, I do know that, so the county, from what I understand, is doing hybrid. So those who are comfortable meeting in person, meet in person, and yet there's still the opportunity for others. So I make that request. I'll be glad when this is all in a rearview mirror and we're meeting in person, but until then, I think people should have some sort of choice. And I know we're not there yet, but that's my 2 cents on that. Thanks.
And just as a cautionary, it does take quite a bit more effort on our staff side, especially on like Jessica and support side, when we start moving to a hybrid, just because of public comment and switching back and forth and all of that. It's not undoable, but we would like to have, advance notice so we could prepare if that was a direction we wanted to move in the near future.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's the advance notice part. So we won't have a meeting and say, okay, and then we'll find out that the next meeting after that is going to be all of a sudden in person. We'll know meetings in advance. Okay, thanks. All right, future dates. So I think we have clearly talked about that the Oak Lodge Library Concord project briefing is going to be on Wednesday, the 17th for us at 5:30 on Zoom. And that the December agenda submission deadline is Wednesday, the 17th. And everybody knows we've moved that back a little because then the planning meeting for setting the agenda is going to be on the 22nd of November. And then the DAC meeting, next one is going to be on December 8th, and it'll be a Zoom meeting. And the planned agenda topics, zone elimination and SDC methodology process, presentation by FCS, and quarterly budget reports, oh goody, and then current capital projects budget update for all the projects that are in fiscal year 21-22. So, and that'll be at the halfway point or within spitting distance. And then overall capital improvement plan CIP list update. I'm really looking forward to that as well. And then we will get an update on where we are. Well, I don't know that Boardman Wetland naming needs to be on there other than some update of what we've accomplished so far, but because we've just moved it out to January, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we'll be adjusting the FCS when we send out the survey, if we have the other meeting. And that was
Okay.
one of the other things, is to lighten the load and be able to really focus on the capital project stuff.
Okay,
A
good.
bit more. So yeah, we'll tighten that up at agenda setting.
Super. And just to clarify what I heard you say, and you said it before, so I appreciate that. We are going to be looking at, with a doodle poll, preferences for the FCS meeting, not necessarily being in the same one, or a subsequent meeting on the same day could be possible as well. Okay.
Yes, that's our goal.
Okay. So we have completed the agenda. The question is there any further business? Was that yes, sir.
Yeah, we had quite a discussion on the SDC earlier, at least preliminary discussion. And I've been, I wonder, where is the SDC methodology written down? I've looked on the website several times and around. I've never found anything where it's actually been written down and explained as to what this is. Because our discussion tonight had some confusion, because I was thinking about it, what we're talking about so far was how we spend the money. But now we're talking also, said it affected how we collect the money. And so I was wondering where that is written down.
Well, actually, that kind of relates to a conversation Mike and I had. I'm not going to have him answer, but the question is, so is there a summary that sort of like an executive summary kind of overview of it, as opposed
No,
to?
not a summary, what the actual methodology.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty extensive. I'll let Mike take that one all by himself.
Summary is great, but
You muted Dave, but yeah, I'm going to defer to Heather on that to try and explain what we could provide.
Please, Heather.
Yeah, I can put a little link in the chat, but if you go to ncprd.com/SDCs, you'll find links to the ordinance 11-2017. That's the last ordinance. That was merely to update a detail where zone 3 was split into Sunnyside and like 3A and 3. So there's the really more meaningful paper that has, I will warn you, has a lot of detail, so you can really get sucked into some very nitty gritty, is the SDC methodology report. That was from 2007. And that's our standing methodology today, even though there have been some ordinances that have done some updates to the actual policy with the zones, but the actual methodology hasn't changed. And that's codified through ordinance 09-2007. So you'll find links to all of those at ncprd.com/SDCs, and I will put that in the chat. And for sort of a SDC 101, you know, this is a lot of learning for everybody. So if you go back to your September packet, you will find sort of our SDCs 101 when FCS comes back at the next meeting. They will do a little bit deeper dive into that overview, a slightly more technical. So those are a couple of resources that will give you a little bit more information. And then if you want to do any of that self-study, you know, please feel free to bring questions to that first meeting. We'll be leaving ample time for discussion.
Well, is the SDC process, is that actually codified someplace like in a state law or a county ordinance or something like that?
Yeah, it's guided by state law. There's an SDC set of state statutes that cover how it can be used, how it's distributed, under what conditions, and all of that. If you want, we could send out a link to where that information is as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
Are you interested in that, Dave?
Yeah, I don't want anybody to go to a lot of work, but if the links are available, you know, I'm not sure what to ask for at this point, how deep to go into it, but something that,
well,
maybe not all the way to the state law, but something in between.
as a teaser and a bit of a spoiler alert, that is what one of the several of the slides that are covered in the FCS presentation, where they directly are referencing the individual statutes that apply to SDCs.
Okay, so those links are available, and so those of us who want to read ahead as opposed to have it come out the first time, is there'll be time to do that before we meet with them?
What I was going to suggest is, I mean, Heather and I, or I can contact FCS or find their slides and just pull up that statute and find the state link and provide that to you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but again, it'll be covered in more depth by the consultants in our December meeting.
Right. I know for me personally, I like to kind of preview things before I hear the details on it. So, okay, thanks. I'll look forward to that. Any other further business? Oh, is that Ben's hand up? Okay, Ben.
Sure is. Sorry to keep the confusion going on, but the link, Heather, you sent was from what, 2007? Yeah, 2007 methodology. And I tooled around the web and found something that had FSC's logo on it from 2018 that kind of started off with a memo to Scott Archer that has like a lot of tables and graphs on it. What's the 2018 memo summary versus what's in 2007?
If you could go ahead and send me that, that would be great. And I'll make sure I provide the right comment. But basically, FCS had started the process of an SDC methodology update. This is what Mike referred to earlier, and had gotten to the point of gathering consensus, a strong consensus about the use of a uniform methodology, but then had to stop cold because of Happy Valley's pull back into the district. And so they were partway into determining that methodology. And that's what the memo started to cover some of that draft material. But if you can send that to me, I can make a more specific clarification on what that document was.
I just put it in the link.
Yeah, it's in the
thank
chat.
you.
And thanks, Ben. Thanks for doing that. That's great. All right. Let's try again. Is there any further business?
I was going to say, I believe what Ben has there is what Commissioner Savas had mentioned earlier, asking for that report. And it
Excellent.
didn't get adopted or finalized. That's where we're starting at.
Okay. Any further business? Hearing none, this meeting's adjourned, and thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Have a great Thanksgiving.